is fable. So when I hear the word fable, I immediately think of kind of like almost a children's tale, something for children that they tell them some story. A lot of times it involves animals or something like that, and the main thing is it will teach some lesson. It will teach some lesson. So, do you know Aesop?
Yeah.
Aesop fables. Aesop's fables. That is what he is known for. He has those fables. There's a very famous fable with we say the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise and the hare. Tortoise is basically turtle. Hare is basically rabbit. You know, the
race between
slow and steady wins the race. That is the famous saying. Slow and steady wins the race. That is a famous fable. So, I actually never really thought of Rosa Parks as a fable. Maybe more legend, but legend sounds too old and like King Arthur and stuff like that. But actually, you could think after reading it, okay, Rosa Parks is kind of like a fable. It's not exactly the first thing you think of. Like I said, the first thing you think of is like Aesop's fables and stuff like that. But Rosa Parks can be a fable also. Number 2, boycott. To boycott is when a group of people, many people, refuse to buy a product or to a service. It doesn't have to be a product, it can be a service. Usually it's probably a product. It's different than strike. You know, strike is when the workers stop working. A boycott is when usually consumers or citizens group together and decide to not buy something or decide to not do something because they are not happy with it or they have some problem with it. You know, if a food company is not treating its workers right, people may say boycott their product. Do not buy Coca-Cola or whatever. To boycott something. And here they did a boycott of, what did they boycott? The bus? The transportation? Maybe they did not use the transportation?
Yeah,
riding
both.
a bus.
Yeah, so they didn't ride the bus. Number 3, foreground. So she uses foreground as a verb. I think it is more common to see foreground as a noun. Bring something to the foreground as opposed to the background, right? The opposite is background. If something is in the background, it is hidden or not the main thing, not focused on. If something is in the foreground, it is the main thing. It is focused on. So she talks about the fact that she was a good Christian seamstress, right? They wanted to foreground this. They wanted to emphasize. That's another word you could use, to emphasize this, to foreground this, make this, bring this to people's attention is another. There are, I think Michael Bromley mentioned, he thought this was a little bit strange sentence, right? There are other ways you could say it. Sometimes people use the word forefront. You could also say, you could phrase it many different ways. They've started to bring this to people's attention. They started to emphasize. There are many different ways you could say it. I do think it's more common to use it as a noun, but she uses it as a verb. Seamstress, a good Christian seamstress. A seamstress is a job, a person who sews. Sew is actually spelled S-E-W. You would think it is Sue, but in the pronunciation wise it's sew. To sew something using the needle and the thread. These days they have a machine can do it, right? A sewing machine. So the person whose job that is a seamstress. A tailor makes clothes. A cobbler makes shoes. A seamstress sews. A seamstress does imply that it is a woman. Seamstress, waitress, right? Waiter is the man, waitress is the woman. Seamstress, it implies that it is a woman. Up until a couple months ago, if you would have asked me what is the male called, I didn't know. For some reason, I found out a couple months ago because of the necktie business. It is called a seamster. Seamster. For some reason, if I am willing to bet if you ask most Americans what is a seamstress is a woman, what do you call a male seamstress? Most people probably can't answer that. For some reason, it is one of those professions. Maybe it's a bit sexist, but it is associated with being like a womanly type profession. I think that's a little bit sexist, but many people probably couldn't tell you the male form is seamster. Number 5, wantedly. Wantedly means kind of accustomed, normal, usual. If someone is very, they walk very slow, you could say his wantedly slow pace or something like that. That is his habit, that is his custom, that is what is usual for him. He is very slow and that is normal. Here they talk about wantedly traditions. These traditions are normal and usual and not strange and usual, custom. I do think you could argue that it's a little bit repetitive. Wantedly traditions. Of course, traditions are going to be normal and usual. Maybe not always. Maybe there are some traditions people find strange, right? So he wants to emphasize that these traditions are normal and to many people, the tradition of segregation. People thought it was normal. These are wantedly traditions. People are used to this. Number 6, metaphor. I'm hoping that you guys understand metaphor. It's a bit difficult to explain in words, but it is when a word or a phrase has another meaning. Metaphors are common in songs, in movies, in literature, any type of art, especially like movies or art, books, Animal Farm. Do you know the book Animal Farm? What? Orwell, yeah. Orwell was kind of a metaphor for the Russian communists, right? And there are other words, actually metaphor might be better, Animal Farm might be better classified as satire. Satire is more using comedy, right? So actually satire might not be the right word. Allegory is another similar word. Simile is a metaphor, but it uses the word like or as. So a lot of times in poetry or songs, they will use a simile. Your eyes are as beautiful as the sky. Your eyes are like the sky. So if it uses the word like or as, that is a simile. Metaphor is more broader meaning. You can have metaphors in many different platforms, in many different places. And number 7, chastise. Chastise really just means to criticize severely, and there's similar words, reprimand, rebuke. It does not imply punish, but just a parent will chastise, or a teacher will chastise someone when they do something wrong, when they do something bad. Your boss can chastise you and really just tell you that you did something bad. I'm not happy with you, and it does have when you use the word chastise, it seems quite severe. Maybe yelling or screaming. Not necessarily. If a boss chastises you, he can just pull you into his office, and tell you, not yelling, oh, that was horrible, but you did. I'm really not happy with that, blah, 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 to chastise.
What's the softer one? Softer than chastise?
Maybe reprimand. Reprimand is a little bit less severe. You can express displeasure, something like that. Chastise sounds a little bit severe, something.
Okay.
It could be, it can be yelling and angry, but it can just be, you know, a lot of times when parents are really, if your parents aren't yelling and they are just really, that is almost worse sometimes,
Yeah.
right? When the parent is not angry, just really disappointed and really, you can still chastise in that manner, in that way. So those are the 7 vocabulary words. Any questions about the words?